Diversity, 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 diversity,
diversity, diversity, diverse,
diversity, diversity, diversity,
diversity, diversity, diversity, diversity.
So the way we're going to approach this is through a hate crime kicker. So if you graffiti a building, it is a crime now. But if your motivation is hate, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in prison.
They put you in jail right away. No trial, no nothing.
If you want to litter, it's a crime right now. But if you litter and your motivation is a hate crime, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in jail.
You're playing music too loud, right to jail, right away.
It is a crime right now to hang banners from an interstate. For obvious reasons, we don't want to distract drivers. But if you do that and you have a hate crime, a hate motivation, it will be a third-degree felony. You will spend 5 years in jail.
You undercook fish, believe it or not, jail. You overcook chicken, also jail. Undercook, overcook.
Why would you pick Gannon over Bieniemy? Why? Why would any team want Gannon on the left there and not Bieniemy on the right? Here to help me understand is legendary sports broadcaster and CNN contributor Bob Costas. But let's just ask the question on the table. Would Eric Bieniemy be a head coach today if he were white?
I think you'd have to conclude that is likely.
It comes in the context we need to note that several black NFL coaches are suing the league. They're alleging racial discrimination in hiring practices. It's hard to argue that that's not playing a role here.
You have to believe it plays some role.
Governor Newsom's pick to replace Senator Dianne Feinstein.
And Newsom fulfilled his pledge to appoint a black woman and someone not currently running for the seat. LaFonda Butler has never held an elected office, but has a long track record in California politics. She served as a senior advisor to Harris's 2020 presidential campaign.
What a blind sense of privilege. What a lack of compassion.
Asao Inoue is a prominent professor of rhetoric. He doesn't want kids graded on English.
We must stop saying that we have to teach this dominant English.
If we do, that's racist, he says.
If you use a single standard to grade your students' languaging, you engage in racism.
People believe him. Education journals publish his ideas. Some schools have dropped grades.
The Lord Justice Clark, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The head of the Law Society, white. The head of the Faculty of Advocates, white. Every prison governor, white. And not just justice. The Chief Medical Officer, white. The Chief Nursing Officer, white. The Chief Veterinary Officer, white. The Chief Social Work Advisor, white. Almost every trade union in this country headed by people who are white. In the Scottish Government, every Director General is white. Every chair of every public body is white.
That's Scotland.
Capitalism was built on stolen land, stolen labor, and stolen resources. And a check today could not undo the cumulative impact of generations of that stolen wealth in all of those categories. And so I think it has to come in the form of land, labor, and resources in an ongoing fashion. And there are structures that we have that could be flipped to begin to do that reparations. Instead of a bid collecting extra taxation from the black and brown businesses that are struggling, you could be collecting those extra taxes from white-led businesses all over the city and redistributing them to black and brown-owned businesses.
Come up with.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Before we know it, she'd have a Snoop Dogg tattoo on her shoulder.
For shizzle, my nizzle.
I'm telling you. Julie, what do you think about that? Huh, she says.
We see a lot of racial disparities. Black and brown Americans, tribal citizens, and rural residents much more likely to lose their lives, whether it's in a car or as a pedestrian being hit by a car. There are a lot of reasons related to discrimination.
Look, you can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious.
You know, this conversation I had with Bill, we're talking about critical race theory, and I think it's imperative that it's taught, that we look at our history, much the same, I think, that Germany has looked at their history in involvement in the wars, that the 1 and 2, and embrace it and say, this is where we went wrong. This is how it went wrong. When I see the Make America Great Again, my comment is, do you accept that that could possibly be construed as a racist remark? And most people, a lot of people go, how could that be racist? Make America great again? I said, so just ask yourself from an African-American experience, when was it ever great in America for the African-American? When was it great? So if you're making it great again, it's not including them.
And I want to thank our incredible president, President Donald John Trump.
2 months ago, I was in a prison cell, and I'm in the White House. Let's continue to make America great again.
Also breaking, President Trump has signed a bipartisan bill that permanently funds HBCUs. The bill provides more than $250 million to these universities and others that serve minority students.
So this is historically black colleges and universities executive order, very important to all of us. With this executive order, we will make HBCUs a priority in the White House, an absolute priority.
All right.
If you're making it great again, it's not including them.
A new bill proposed last month in the California State Senate aims to create what's called an Ebony Alert system. This is to help find missing black women and girls. The system would be similar to the Amber Silver alerts already used in this state.
Hey, Jimmy, how's it going? Oh my God, I grew up in LA listening to this.
Dancing the Viennese waltz. Amber Riley.
It is a misconception that all white nationalists have to be white. But let's look at Hispanic white nationalists like Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio and online political activist Nick Fuentes. What have you seen in regards to non-white people becoming advocates for white supremacist ideas?
The Latino identity, the Hispanic identity, the Latinx identity is incredibly complex. It is not exclusively a race. It is not exclusively an ethnicity. It creates a lot of room for extremist views like white supremacy.
In those 53 years in America, I have never encountered a racial slur. I'm really not aware that any of that applies to me. I live a good life. Yet, you on tape call me a brown face. Yes, sir, it's on tape.
Right, and what I told you was what you just exhibited. As the only member of their caucus who is not of the Caucasian persuasion, I said that you put a brown face on white supremacy.
Let me ask you this. First of all, we have accusatory commentary of Soros DAs. Let us not put an individual that is not here, a contributing American, and jeopardize his life for always throwing his name out in the most ugliest way. I am offended by that. Mr. Soros does not deserve that. He is an American and a patriot, and he also comes from a minority community, one might say, and you create a dangerous situation. That's unfortunate.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all.
And so we've been together fighting to try to cancel student loan debt. Student loan debt is a racial justice issue.
I just want to ask one question. My daughter's getting out of school. I saved all my money. She doesn't have any student loans. Am I going to get my money back? Of course not. So you're going to pay for people who didn't save any money, and those of us that did the right thing get screwed.
No, it's not anybody got screwed. When we started,
of course we did. My buddy had fun, bought a car, went on vacations. I saved my money. He made more than I did. But I worked a double shift, worked extra. My daughter's worksheet is 10. So you're laughing. Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. We did the right thing, and we get screwed.
I appreciate
That's
it.
all right.
Can I ask you what you identify as?
Identify?
Ethnicity?
I identify as an American.
Not an African American? Are you African American?
I didn't get elected into my position because of the color of my skin or do any race baiting stuff that it seems like you're promoting here.
Oh, I'm promoting race baiting? I'm promoting race baiting? No, I think you're promoting privilege, tokenism.
Today, Republicans are so afraid of democracy that they want to disenfranchise predominantly black voters who have been disenfranchised for as far back as when black people were enslaved in the United States of America. This has nothing to do with election integrity. This is about racial control, and this is not new.
DC statehood is not about one party or the other. It's about freedom, and it's about political self-determination. It's about overcoming the white supremacist violence of voter suppression in this here historically black city.
The hateful, divisive rhetoric is historical as per redlining, and the anti-immigrant sentiment is directly connected to the Great Replacement theory. Now, I know none of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will admit to being racist, and I don't think they are. But when you look at the rhetoric and you hear the talking points and look at the legislation that's put forward, what are we to say?
The gentleman will suspend.
It's very difficult to sit here and listen to arguments in the long history of this country of using scripture and weaponizing and abusing scripture to justify bigotry. White supremacists have done it. Those who justified slavery did it. Those who fought against integration did it. And we're seeing it today.
When you say I'm anti-woke, when you talk about wokeness, you're saying I'm anti-black and I don't want black people to speak up for themselves. I don't want equality and justice for black folks.
An anthropology professor at UC Berkeley is apologizing for not telling the truth about her ethnicity. Elizabeth Hoover's identity as Native American had been questioned for years. She issued an apology this week for falsely identifying as indigenous, saying she is a white person who lived an identity based on family lore.
In Latin America, there's often a different racial hierarchy. Whiteness has to do with a larger amount of Spanish heritage and a smaller amount of indigenous or African heritage. This claim to a neo-Nazi set of ideas by someone who might be classified as Latino in many U.S. settings is true not just for the Allen gunmen, but for many other people, including other people in the Proud Boys.
Well, Clarence Thomas, all you got, anybody who's watched the movie Django, just watch Stephen and you see Clarence Thomas.
Django, this is another cheeky black bugger like yourself, Stephen. Stephen, this here's Django. You two ought to hate each other.
Calvin, just who the hell is this you feels the need to entertain?
Now, your problem right now is making a good impression. And I want you to start solving that problem right now and get the rooms ready.
Yes, sir, Mr. Candy.
Clarence Thomas has decided that his best personal interest is siding with the powerful and the special interests, and regardless as to who they're going to hurt. He's like, I'm looking out for me, and I don't care nothing about you. But I'm on the Supreme Court, so it's my job to look out for you. So he's abdicating his responsibility. He has abdicated a long time ago. When he got in office, he was this way. He's this way now. Maybe he's worse now. So Clarence Thomas needs to be impeached. Clarence Thomas is illegitimate and has no basis in the job that he's in. And it's a lesson to us as African Americans.
This issue has unfortunately put some, not all of course, but some Muslim families on the same side of an issue as white supremacists and outright bigots. And, however, the folks who I've talked here today, I would not put in the same category as those folks although, it's, again, complicated because they're falling on the same side of this particular issue.
What does it say about our society that for one of our two major political parties, the salient issue for them is stopping students from learning Black history and from even discussing the existence of gay people?
In many ways, we're not at a place where a major political party is trying to stop, let's say, Black children from going to school with white children at Central High School, but they're trying to segregate in a different type of way. They're trying to segregate out the history and the experiences of people of color.
Tonight over the name of a cow at the Wisconsin State Fair. The name is a widely recognized racial slur.
The cow actually won a competition and the exhibitor was rewarded.
That cow won an award here just 1 week ago, but apparently no one spoke up about the name. Now the fair is apologizing. The family who named the cow is apologizing. Others, though, are asking why it took so long. The Wisconsin State Fair is regarded as a wholesome tradition dating back to 1851, which is why what David Blake saw here Thursday stunned him.
We're walking through the dairy barn, enjoying ourselves, and kind of came across the nameplate and was kind of taken back.
He snapped a photo showing the cow had a racially offensive term for a name.
It's one of those words, one of those few words that are should be, totally off limits. I mean, there's a big one that we all know. I think it's kind of on the same level.
The cow's name has been changed in the online listing of awards from the offensive name now to puzzle.
As soon as they said Mark Perez, I said, of course it is, because there is no one who has more racism in themselves than someone who's been oppressed more than the highest tier. And the closer you get to white, the more people you have to hate.
But I found a box of multicultural crayons, and I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and we were sharing the crayons one night, and it was simply, I see one that looks like me. So thusly, Nuri was born. Nuri, what do you see? I see a color that looks like me.
I think that's a beautiful thing. But I think when you were doing a deep dive into looking at children represented in books of different colors, what did you find?
What I found is that only 12% of the main characters in books are African Americans or Hispanics. So therefore, I thought, wow, let's look at this. And then looking at only 13% of the authors that write books are African Americans. So we started looking, and I started writing and getting excited. And so thusly, we're having Nuri.
To stand up against the poison of white supremacy, as I did my inaugural address, to single out as the most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy. And I'm not saying this because I'm at a black HBCU. I say it wherever I go.
Okay, first, if you're going to ask a question, don't point at me and don't be disrespectful to me. I'm the mayor of this city, and treat me with the respect I deserve to be treated. I'm speaking to you as an adult. Don't stand in front like you treated someone that's on the plantation that you own. Give me the respect I deserve and engage in the conversation up here in Washington Heights. Treat me with the same level of respect I treat you. So don't be pointing at me. Don't be disrespectful to me. Speak with me as an adult, because I'm a grown man. I walked into this room as a grown man, and I'm going to walk out of this room as a grown man. I answered your question.
The RNC is posting frequently clips from her speeches, flubs. They are really taking aim at her. Why do you think Republicans have calculated it is a good strategy and that the vice president makes Democrats vulnerable?
I mean, this is a classic us versus them playbook that unfortunately, the other party too often than not wheels out. And it's frankly offensive. She is an icon. She is an icon in the South Asian community, in the African American community, among millions of women in this country. I frankly think it's offensive.
And we're
Raquel Evita Saraswati, an American Muslim writer and activist who focuses on women's rights, democracy, and individual freedom.
Let's welcome Raquel Evita Saraswati to the show.
When you do dissent with what is portrayed as the mainstream belief, you're called names.
Tell us about another example about somebody completely lying about what their heritage is.
This is my favorite story of the week. Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk about
Here
her.
to help.
Okay, so she used to be known, maybe your viewers know the name Rachel Dolezal.
Rachel Dolezal, the NAACP leader now accused of lying about being black, her own parents coming out and saying their daughter is in fact white.
White woman back in 2015 outed as having been running a chapter of the NAACP. Meet Rachel Dolezal II. She was Rachel Elizabeth Seidel, but she went more recently as Raquel Saraswati. Now, Rachel Elizabeth is white as the day is long. I mean, she's as white as I am, right? And but Raquel Saraswati was allegedly gay, Muslim, Latina, of South Asian and Arab descent. Absolutely none of which is true. She might be gay. That's it. That's it. All the rest is a lie. Her parents have come out, her mother has come out to say, I don't know why she's been doing this. It isn't true. And her bronzer is getting darker year after year. And like all great race fakers, she wound up becoming the head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group for some Philadelphia-based Quaker group called the American Friends Service Committee.
I'm Michelle Wu, and I'm running for mayor to make Boston a city for everyone.
Tonight, Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu admits that a mistake was made in an invitation to a holiday party. Members of the Boston City Council received an email invitation to what's called a gathering of electeds of color. Not all members of the council fit that description.
So her office sent an email invitation to all city council members instead of just those of color. And then the mayor later had to defend that party invite last night.
I think we've had individual conversations with everyone so people understand that it was truly just an honest mistake that went out in typing the email field. And I look forward to celebrating with everyone at the holiday parties that we will have besides this one as well. So it is my intention that we can, again, be a city that lives our values and create space for all kinds of communities to come together.
Given some of the strife that exists, though, in this council, are you concerned this lends itself at all to further divisiveness?
No, I mean, again, this is a group that has been in place for many, many years. We want to be a city where everyone's identity is embraced and that there are spaces and communities that we can help support.
Okay, all right, so we embraced Tarloff and Tyrus. I should say, minutes later, someone from the office sent an email out. This is what it read. I want to apologize for my previous email regarding a holiday party for tomorrow. I did send that to everyone by accident. I apologize if my email may have offended or came across as so. Sorry for any confusion this may have caused.
But basically, it still is like, if you're white, you're not invited.
And if this happened at any company in America, what would the HR department say then?
The same thing that I'm saying right now. You need to resign. Like, this is the most disturbing thing. Is the apology is for getting caught. That's the biggest. That should be the big red flag. And then when questioned on it, it was like, we want to make sure there's a safe place for everybody, unless of course you're white, because you're not welcome at a Christmas party. Your constituents are not just people of color. They're white people that have voted you in. But when you do this, you don't look at the consequences. If I was a white nationalist right now, I'd be saying, I told you. See, this is what happens. They are after us.
Mayor apologizing for any confusion that the original email created.
It's not confusing, Michelle.
In some ways, tomorrow night's Academy Awards mark big advances in diversity. 4 of this year's 20 acting nominees are of Asian descent, the most ever. And last year, more top movies starred women of color than in the previous 16 years. But there are still notable gaps, particularly for women behind the camera. None of the Best Director nominees is a woman, and only one of the films up for Best Picture was directed by a woman. And there were no nominations in any category for films with both black female leads and black female directors. The University of Southern California has found that in Oscar's 95-year history, Only 17% of nominees have been women, and fewer than 2% have been women of color. What's more, only 9% of the directors of last year's top 100 earning films were women, and less than 3% were women of color.
I thought it was particularly reaffirming, especially for Asian Americans, American actors, or just Asian Americans in the country, considering I was in California covering the shootings there and the killings, and all of the anti-Asian hate that has been going on in the country, especially since COVID. I thought it was a really important and reaffirming moment for Asian Americans, and I hope that they feel it in this country, and that everyone does.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope it's not a moment.
Yeah.
Again.
High school students in Oregon will not need to perform proficiency tests showing mastery of reading, writing, or math in order to graduate.
While some say the decision will lower state standards and cheapen an Oregon diploma, the Oregon Department of Education tells me this policy simply didn't work and disproportionately harmed students of color.
All right, in tonight's Breaking Buzz, San Francisco's bold new proposal for slave reparations.
Andy Reesmeyer joining us now live. He's got that in the Breaking Buzz.
Yes. Good afternoon and good evening. This is a story that has just gone wild online today. The city of San Francisco is considering an idea to pay $5 million each to black residents as reparations for slavery. It's one of 100 recommendations made by a city board which wants to address social inequities in the city. In addition to the one-time payments, they also recommend the elimination of all personal debt and tax burdens. There would be guaranteed income of at least $97,000 a year for 250 years and homes for as little as $1. Of the 50,000 black people who live in the city, it is not totally clear who would be eligible, but the group is focusing on descendants of both enslaved people and those incarcerated for drugs. As the AP reports, critics say the payouts don't make sense in a state and city that never enslaved black people. If it went through, one analyst said it would cost each non-black family in the city $600,000. This is separate, by the way, from the state's reparations task force created by Governor Gavin Newsom back in 2020.
Our top story. As we all know, Congress recently approved paying over $1 trillion to African Americans as reparations for slavery. Well, today, the first checks were sent out.
Get the money, y'all. There's poor people around. With your broke ass.
Right, baby. I just bought this truck straight cash. And I got enough cigarettes to last me and my family for the rest of our lives. I'm rich, biatch.
These checks aren't just affecting things on Beach Street. Wall Street is having a big day as well.
Get this, Sprint stock has skyrocketed after the news that 2 million delinquent phone bills have been paid just this morning. Incredible. Gold is way up. Diamonds are at their most expensive level ever. Catchphrase around here is certainly bling bling.
Everyone knows that the right-wing extremism in this country has targeted democratically ran cities, and quite frankly, they've been very intentional about going after democratically ran cities that are led by people of color. They're still mad that a black man is free in this country.
Forget about vote by mail. How about vote by jail? Squad Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley introducing a bill that would let people convicted of a felony to vote in federal elections, including criminals currently locked up. Pressley also wants to lower the age at the ballot box by letting 16-year-olds vote.
That's why we're here today, to introduce the Inclusive Democracy Act, a historic, brand new, first of its kind bill that will end the stain of felony disenfranchisement in America and guarantee the right to vote for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated citizens. Our bill is a reflection of bold, progressive, democratic values. Because with Republicans and the Supreme Court stopping at nothing to undermine voting rights and to exclude black and brown folks from participating in our democracy. Legislation, as someone whose family has been directly impacted by mass incarceration, is deeply personal. Growing up, my father, Martin, was absent for most of my formative years.
Shocking. To quote Zora Neale Hurston, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Nikki Haley instead is the Dinesh D'Souza of Candace Owens. She's the alpha Karen with brown skin. And for white supremacists and racists, she's the perfect Manchurian candidate.
Bill sponsor DFL Representative Mike Freiberg says the imagery also needs reimagination. Right now, it depicts a Native American riding off into the distance with a white settler on the land. The first flag adopted in 1893 did too, and it changed to the one we have today in 1957.
the whole idea since day one for me was to make sure that we can do a flag that unites us instead of separating us. So today you have that choice, and hopefully you vote with that conscience.
Thank God. Crisis averted.
Thank you. Do they know what the Gadsden flag is? That it's a historical flag?
So the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed is due to its origins with slavery and slave trade. That is what was, that's the reasoning behind them not displayed.
The Gadsden flag?
The Don't Tread on Me.
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag? Okay, so he's, what's gonna happen if he doesn't take it off?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, I was upset that he was missing so much school. I'm like, so I asked if, can he just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class? Like, I just want him to go back to class. The bag can't go back. It's got the patch on it, because we can't have that in and around other kids. So that's what I was trying to, and then he said you were close. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with slavery. That's like the Revolutionary War patch that was displayed when they were fighting the British. Like that wasn't, that's the revolution. Maybe you're thinking of like the Confederate Confederate flag?
Okay, I am
Is there
just
history
here
teacher
to
that you
enforce,
tell them?
no, I am here to enforce the policy that was provided by the district. And definitely you have every right to not agree with it. I mean,
Yeah, because the
absolutely.
ACLU says that he's allowed to wear that. If you like go on their website, it's like says in big letters.
All I'm saying is that
Unless there's like a ban on patches, period. Like if you said there's no patches allowed at the school, you cannot display what you think or anything like that, or what cheer or anything like that. I think it's like one-sided, you know, because you allow some patches but not other patches.
Kids have patches like other names and like the American flag on their backpacks.
Yeah. That was like flown during the revolution with, I just don't understand that at all.
So what I can do is
And if you go onto the ACLU's website, let's talk to
I
someone. can,
I
I
can
don't
have
want a
you speak
lawsuit. I really don't.
I can have you speak to Jeff Yoakum again. And then he can refer you to our person at the district.
Okay.
Because like I said, we're following district policy is what we're doing. So the last thing I want is him out of class.
Yeah, I know.
That's all
He
the last
takes
thing I
his
want.
classes seriously.
Yes.
He studies. He wants to get straight A's. He did that. He made honor roll when he was here before.
Yep.
He intends to do that again right now, but it's hard because he keeps missing class for this. So
I understand that.
yeah, and I mean we teach him to always stick up for your beliefs. And I mean you're going over the revolution for 7th grade. I mean the founding fathers stood up for what they believed in against unjust laws. This is unjust.
Okay, like I said, we're upholding a policy that was provided to us.
This is footage of the man police say they were looking for. He has not yet been identified, but we are blurring his face at the moment while charges are pending.
No peace since this moment last week. Jones, one of 3 Democrats with a bullhorn, commandeering a legislative session.
Republicans tonight are voting to expel Democratic lawmakers from the Tennessee House of Representatives.
Friday, the government decided that my Savior Jesus, a man that was innocent of all crimes except fighting for the poor, fighting for the marginalized, fighting for the LGBTQ community, fighting for those who are single mothers, fighting for those who are ostracized, fighting for those pushed to the periphery. My Savior, my black Jesus, he was lynched by the government on Friday. And they thought that all hope had been lost. Oh, the outside, it rained and it thundered and everybody said everything was over, and it was some black women who stood at the cross. It was some black women who watched what the government did to that boy named Jesus.
General, do we have too many white officers in the Air Force?
Senator, what I really look at is the quality of all the officers that we have, and we look at the aspect of everyone who's qualified, meets the qualifications, is promoted. And when
Well, I would agree with you, but that answer is not consistent with your August 9th memo. In your August 9th memo, you said that you signed on to that there should be a reduction, essentially, of about 9% of the white officers. That's 5,400. We have 5,400, too many white officers. And this is the real impact, I think, of this desire of the administration. I'm saddened to see this in this memo, of this obsession with sort of race-based politics being interjected into our military. How did you come up with the percentage of 67.5% of the officers should be white? And how did you come up with 13% should be black? And how did you come up with 10% should be Asian? And how did you come up with 1.5% should be American Indian and Native Alaskan? How did you come up with 1% being Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander? And how did you come up with 15% of our officers should be Hispanic or Latino?
Senator, that is based on that memo is on application goals, not the actual makeup of the force. And those numbers are based on the demographics of the nation.
Okay, well, all right. There's 10% of our country is Asian American. So is that where you came up with it? Just a percentage of the population?
Essentially.
Because right now the actual percentage, I mean, this is where this is a ridiculous conversation, to be perfectly honest. Because why didn't you come up with, or are you going to come up with the percentage of the overall force? Did you contemplate that? Of how many, black Americans should be in the Air Force? Or how many Asian Americans should be in the Air Force? Did you contemplate the total force percentages?
Senator, what we looked at was the aspect of providing opportunities for anybody who wants to serve.
Listen, if that were the case, if that were what was in this memo, I wouldn't be asking you these questions.
Hey everybody, I'm Justin J. Pearson. My Savior Jesus, a man that was innocent of all crimes except fighting for the poor. And I'm running for president of BSG. There are a few reasons that we're running this campaign this year. My Savior, my black Jesus. One has to do with representation. How can we represent all voices in a conversation? Because indeed they lynched him on a Friday. Indeed they thought they'd had all of it lost and all of the injustices gained on a Friday. I wanted to do this by partnering with organizations from the Bowdoin Democrats to the Bowdoin Republicans.
So what happened on the House floor? Well, a GOP colleague told a story about the late Lois DeBerry, the first African-American woman elected to the Tennessee State House, who once pointed out to him the appropriateness of wearing a tie. Pearson believed those comments were a criticism and took to Twitter saying, "A white supremacist has attacked my wearing of a dashiki."
I want to bring together different voices, dissenting voices, voices that may be more liberal or more conservative. There's a promise that Sunday is always coming. Resurrection is always on the way. In order that we can reach a point of sort of the radical middle, where conversation and dialogue happens and growth happens. Resurrection is always promised. Let them beat, let them lynch, let them expel, let them kick out, let them do what they must. There's a promise that Sunday's resurrection is on the way. So join the People's Pearson campaign and let's chart ourselves to a better future. Thank you.
You've praised Ibram X. Kendi as someone who you like, as an amazing historian and author, and you said that you would like to push some of Ibram X. Kendi's ideas even further.
I don't think white people worldwide have really reckoned with how much their own personal identity is shaped by constructions of whiteness, and how much that construction of whiteness prevents white people from connecting to humanity. In other words, recognizing that when you recognize that you are part and parcel of humanity, in other words, you're not over humanity, right? It allows you to really be able to connect to people who don't look like you, who have kinky hair, who have dark skin, and to see yourself in them. And it's whiteness that prevents that, right? And when you're not able to see yourself in other human beings, that creates all sorts of problems. But not just societal problems, personal problems. That I think hopefully this film and this work will liberate those folks from.
I'm sure you're aware, he's famous for saying, quote, "The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination." Kendi also stated that in order to truly be an anti-racist, you have to be anti-capitalist. So I'd like to know, first of all, what would you do to push Ibram Kendi's ideas even further? And do you believe someone should be praising, someone who is currently a federal magistrate judge, be praising someone who encourages discrimination in any circumstance?
Senator, I don't recall having ever remarked that I want to push Ibram Kendi's ideas further. In questions earlier in this hearing, I clearly stated that the ideas that have been described here that have been attributed to Ibram Kendi are not ideas that are consistent with the 20 years in my public service, 16 as a judge, and the record that I have shown striving to apply the law, the Constitution, and Supreme Court precedent would not be consistent with this idea of supporting the ideas that you've described as Ibram Kendi's.
So you're saying that you have never said that you would like to push some of Ibram Kendi's ideas further?
So I don't recall having made that particular statement.
Okay. I see my time has expired. We'll follow up on these in writing. These are concerning one of the most fundamental laws we have that's embedded within our Constitution, is that governments can't treat people differently on the basis of their race, and that's why this is important to ask about. Thank you.
I don't think white people worldwide have really reckoned with how much their own personal identity is shaped by constructions of whiteness.
It's really, really smart. Yeah, it turns out new FBI documents released this week through a FOIA request reveal the Bureau uses internet slang to seek out violent extremism online. It's a mix of odd terms now linked to, quote, racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. Words like based, LARPing, and red-pilled. In other words, they're terms that could be used in a context that don't relate at all to race or extremist views.
Earlier this year, the Heritage Foundation used a FOIA request to expose internal documents which show the FBI has been flagging key words used online to target individuals they believe may be planning a violent attack or may be motivated to do so in the future. The document is titled FBI Domestic Terrorism Reference Guide, subtitled Involuntary Celibate Violent Extremism.
The feds also flag a word called looksmaxing, which is defined as the process of self-improvement with the intent to become more attractive. Well, the cast of The View is safe. For example, they define based as someone who's converted to racist ideology. So I guess they must be keeping a close eye on Joy Reid, right?
The FBI Domestic Terrorism Reference Guide claims that people who are planning to execute an attack and those who have already terrorized use a certain vocabulary that originates from online activity. The FBI's reference guide defines Chad as a, quote, race-specific term used to describe an idealized version of a male who is very successful at gaining sexual and romantic attention from women. Stacy is defined defined as, quote, an idealized version of a female who is successful at gaining sexual and romantic attention from men, chooses chads over incels. Normies and blue pill are lumped together in their glossary and defined as, quote, divisive terms used to describe normal people. Red pill and black pill are listed together for their definitions, stating, quote, red pill refers to a belief shared by many online communities that society is corrupt and that the believer is a victim of this corruption. Black pill refers to a belief that this corruption can only be changed through massive societal reconstructing, often including violence. So the FBI is claiming that these terms are sexist, divisive, and that the people who use these terms online want to commit violent acts to change society, therefore classifying them as domestic terrorists. Later on in the document, the FBI defines terms that are associated with, quote, racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. Based is described as, quote, a term used to refer to someone who has been converted to racist ideology. Red pill is redefined as, quote, taking the red pill or becoming red-pilled indicated the adoption of racist, anti-Semitic, or fascist beliefs. Great replacement is said to be, quote, a term that refers to the belief in a conspiracy to replace the white race in Western culture through high non-white birth rates, mass immigration, and other measures. This portion of the document also suggests that people who use these terms may be reading Mein Kampf for genuine racist, hate-fueled inspiration. Now, taking the red pill and getting based with Chad and Stacy can get you surveilled by blue-pilled normies who work for the Zionist-occupied government that runs the Great Replacement. In other words, by watching this video, you are now a domestic terrorist.
The NAACP.
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 The NAACP.
NAACP.
NAACP. The NAACP.
The NAACP has issued a travel advisory for Florida. It says the state is, quote, openly hostile toward African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ plus individuals, due to a series of measures recently signed by Governor Ron DeSantis.
Florida is openly hostile toward African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ plus individuals. Before traveling to Florida, please understand that the state of Florida devalues and marginalizes the contributions of and the challenges faced by African Americans and other communities of color.
Whiteness damages our humanity. We want white people to cry. We need white people to heal ourselves from this damage to our humanity that patriarchy, that white supremacy has inflicted on us, and become fully human again.
Because to say that these additional police are needed because crime is spilling out into the suburbs, what about these babies who are being lost right in their own cities, who are born into poverty and then who die before they even get an opportunity to change what they were even born into? What about those moms who have to say goodbye to their kids forever simply because of their zip codes? Fuck the suburbs, because they don't know a goddamn thing about how life is in the city.
An open road in Black South Chicago.
This is another example of an arterial street with terrible infrastructure that encourages people to speed.
What? Breaking news from the Supreme Court. The court has just issued a landmark ruling on affirmative action, officially ending the practice in college admissions processes. Colleges and universities will no longer be permitted to take race into account when reviewing the college applications. Now, this is a reversal of the 2003 decision, which ruled that higher education institutions must consider race in students' admissions to promote diversity.
Look, it's heartbreaking for our democracy. Our democracy is stronger when our leadership is diverse. And moving to a place where selective institutions do not have the tool of race-conscious admissions means that we will see fewer Black and Latino students in those institutions. We will see fewer Black and Latino students prepared for leadership roles, whether it's in government, business, the military.
Mayor Brandon Johnson opening up on everything from the migrant crisis to teen takeovers.
The most recent incident of teenagers and young adults converging and overwhelming on one area of the city was a big topic of conversation. It just happened this past weekend, and in that instance, they caused a lot of damage. The mayor responded this way, though, when someone characterized it as mob action.
That's not appropriate. We're not talking about mob actions. I didn't say that. Hold on a second, okay? Respectfully, these large gatherings, just hold on a second, y'all. I promise you, we have time to talk. It's important that we speak of these dynamics in an appropriate way. This is not to obfuscate what is actually taking place. These large gatherings.
Business owners say enough's enough after teens swarmed the Loop again this weekend. In the middle of the chaos, 2 teenagers were shot.
A warning that we've seen time and time again. Cell phone video shows them jumping on a CTA bus. Another captures when a gunshot goes off.
Chaos outside a South Loop 7-Eleven Sunday night. The crowd seen here rushing out of the store with their arms full of items, some throwing them in the air. Inside the store, aisles were ravaged and ransacked.
Establishing a Department of Reconciliation, here's what this department would do. Here's what it would allow us to do. To have a Secretary of Reconciliation, just as we have a Secretary of Commerce, just as we have a Secretary of Education, just as we have a Secretary of Labor. A secretary whose job it would be to wake up every morning with reconciliation on his or her mind. And that secretary would have undersecretaries, just as we have undersecretaries in the Department of Labor, Commerce, Education, undersecretaries that would have various aspects of reconciliation to deal with. And reconciliation would be broader than the enslaved people. Reconciliation would also include others with whom we have not reconciled. We need to reconcile. We have not reconciled.
Hard pass.
Tonight on CBS News.
Died from his injuries at a nearby hospital. Investigators arrested Capers and alleged she fired multiple shots after getting off that bus.
And to address predictable threats, such as algorithmic discrimination.
That's a new one.
Data privacy violations, and deepfakes. We named it the Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights.
One thing I strongly agree with the Deputy on is the need to set a target to have a number of people from ethnic minorities in areas of the public service. We have a health service that's very diverse, although less so as you go up towards the senior positions, not so much in the Gardaí, not so much in the Defence Forces, not so much in the education sector, as the Deputy mentioned, not at all in the civil service, which is very white, including the Department of Equality, for example, and that actually needs to change.
You know, we in the Department of Homeland Security, I issued a memo very early on that we would not use the term illegal alien. When speaking of these individuals, we use the term non-citizen.
So now he's going into a new phase of openly dehumanizing his targets. So that will lessen the taboos in the future. And we see that in 2025, he's got plans for mass deportations, mass imprisonments, and giant camps. So you need people to be less sensitive about violence, either committing it themselves or tolerating it. And I see that as the reason he's using this dehumanizing rhetoric now to prepare people.
Texas lawmakers passed a bill that would allow local police officers without training
to arrest undocumented migrants.
It's a direct challenge to the federal government's authority to police the borders and would become one of the nation's strictest bills if it takes effect.
This bill has many critics, including 30 former immigration judges.
The ACLU is calling it, quote, one of the most radical anti-immigrant laws ever.
Civil rights groups, advocacy groups call this bill anti-migrant.
Civil rights organizations are warning that this could lead to racial profiling.
Some fear it may lead to racial profiling.
This could lead to racial profiling.
Widespread racial profiling.
Racial profiling.
Racial profiling.
If they do cross the border and they are arrested, will they be separated from their children?
Questions about the constitutionality of this legislation.
There is a big concern about the safety of migrants as they are being pushed back into Mexico.
What impact do you think that this will have on that state where Latinos make up 40% of the population?
How much would this cost taxpayers in Texas?
County governments are very concerned about the cost.
This is causing a lot of fear in the migrant community.
Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. The only person more fascist than the Biden regime now is Nikki Haley. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. There's your puppet masters right there, the donors. Just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this race. You can put lipstick on a Dick Cheney. It is still a fascist neocon. All three of them have been licking Donald Trump's boots for years for money and endorsements.
And the smug, condescending way that he just spews this poison out is very, very dangerous because he won't stop Trump, but he's going to outlive Trump by about 50 years. And you're watching the rise of an American demagogue that is a very, very despicable person. And I was shaking listening to him talk because a lot of people don't know that is one step away from Nazi propaganda coming out of his mouth.
I don't believe you.
Have you ever heard of the term nigger wake-up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever
Well,
had
I'm acutely aware, Charlemagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community.
It seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a nigger wake-up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney, because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains.
Look at what they value and look at their budget and what they're proposing. Romney wants to he said in the first 100 days, he's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that.
When I was 17 years old, like many of you, I participated in sit-ins to desegregate the restaurants and movie houses of Wilmington, Delaware. I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff. During the 60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else.
He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not.
Afterwards, he asked me to come by my office, and he came by to say thank you, because he heard I had been stopped trying to get to to visit him and to see him in prison. And I had said once, I said I got arrested. I wasn't arrested, I got stopped. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robben Island. I came back from South Africa trying to see Nelson Mandela and getting arrested for trying to see him on Robben Island. He was in prison.
When I said arrested, I meant I was not able to move. Cops, Afrikaners would not let me go with them, made me stay where I was. I guess I wasn't arrested. I was stopped. I was not able to move where I wanted to go.
And he came in here and told you aren't even black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seemed to me that should have been a nigga wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, no, for the record, I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
I didn't say you were.
Yeah, I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you about your party affiliation.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but you are black. And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say think a certain kind of way, otherwise you, quote, ain't black, wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What I just now said, how dare you insult me and tell me I think as a human being, let alone as a black person? I don't tell you how to think, Joe Biden. How dare you come in here and tell me how I should think? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump if I want to vote for Donald Trump. And if I want to vote for Donald Trump, it does not make me not black.
The Biden-Harris administration believes diversity of thought, background, perspective, and lived experience must be at the policymaking table.
Is baldness, somebody that looks like me, does that make you a better diplomat, ma'am? I think I know the answer, but...
Not that I know of.
It doesn't. If somebody's 5'8" like me or 6'3" like somebody else, does it make them a better diplomat?
No, I do not believe so.
Likewise, does being white make somebody a better diplomat?
No, I do not believe so.
African American?
No, I do not believe so.
Asian or Islander?
Any specific group?
Native American? It doesn't. I would ask this. Can you tell me, am I white?
I would allow you to tell me how you characterize yourself.
That's exactly right. I would have to tell you not just how I characterize myself, but what I am. But I'm asking, do you know if I'm white?
I do not know.
Half black?
I do not know.
Asian, Islander?
Do not know.
Brown? Latino?
I do not know.
You can't know. You can't know without asking somebody to disclose what they are. And we can't ask what somebody is, and it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter that I'm half Mexican. It shouldn't matter whether I'm able-bodied or ambulatory or not ambulatory. That doesn't have anything to do with what my background is, that I served in these operations in the military, that I gained these skills, that I studied this in school, that I proved that I could pass whatever tests under stress and duress and be effective in the field under situations that foreign service officers might encounter, like the withdrawal of Afghanistan, the enemy at the gates, people being targeted, trying to deal with countless number of SIVs coming in. That has nothing to do with how somebody looks. It has to do with, did they volunteer to do this? Do they have the skills to do this? Did we test them to make sure they had the skills to do this? Do we hire hard and have the ability to manage a little bit easier? And that's the problem with what I see with what's taking place here. I'd ask you another question. Can you tell me what best looks like?
I'm not sure I'm fully understanding what you're getting at.
What does the best candidate look like?
Yeah.
The best FSO officer, we'll use that, the best foreign service officer. What does the best look like?
I would say the best for the particular job can look like any one of us, and that is the American way. That's what we support.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So in that, we can't have it be that first we look for a diverse basket of candidates, as is your quote, and then after we look for the diverse basket, then we check the merit of that. The diversity can't be the number one. I want a diverse workforce. I'm glad that I served with a diverse force in the military, diverse colleagues as members of Congress, but that can't be the number one filter. because it does create an inherent bias, an inherent quota system.
Well, let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action.
We all know. Diversity, 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 diverse. Diversity, diversity.
Diversity, diversity, diverse, diverse.
Diversity, 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 diversity,
Diversity, diversity, diversity, diversity.
Diversity, 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 diverse.
Diversity, diversity, diversity.